The end of the world has arrived, and roommates offer sacrifices to the heavens. When the mist falls, the Book of Blood Spirit floats in the hands of all survivors, and only contract monsters can survive. Suhan turned his gaze to his neighboring roommate, who had already mutated and twisted, and silently pulled out a shiny fruit knife. Fierce flesh corpses, giant spiders with cracks, eyeballs shrouding the city, one-eyed and sharp-toothed palm monsters. Civilization has fallen, cities have shattered, and all humans have become prey to monsters. There is only one way to survive. Using monsters to deal with monsters. Keywords of the novel. My monster fusion of all things without pop-ups, my monster fusion of all things. TXT complete collection download, my monster fusion of all things. Latest chapter reading. Chapter 1. Eyes in Mist. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. The source has no content or has errors. Chapter 2. Apostles. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Chapter 2. Apostles. Contract. Suhan quickly realized without any hesitation and chose the contract directly. In fact, he has no other choice. He doesn't know what kind of ghost this world has become. Just in his shared apartment, his roommate alone made him feel so embarrassed, with wounds on his hands, constantly panting heavily, his heart still beating violently, and he was almost exhausted. Not to mention, outside this building, in the mist, there was that huge eyeball. Only by seizing every opportunity to become stronger can we survive. I'm sorry, Yang Tian. Suhan whispered that Yang Tian was his roommate, half familiar but not very familiar. However, the person was pretty good. Occasionally, I heard that he was planning to go home to see his parents for National Day. He hasn't gone home for 2 years, and his parents are both in their 60s, but he can't go back anymore. The pages of the Blood Spirit book opened, and a red light immediately enveloped the physical body. In a few breaths, the remains of the corpse gradually turned red and then merged into the black pattern of the human figure on the page. Apostle. Corpse level. First level. Lower skill. None. The panel information that jumped out was transmitted to Suhan's consciousness, and no one else could see this information except him. As the contract was successful, Suhan felt a force feedback from the Blood Spirit book and then integrate into his body. The limbs and bones have become slightly stronger, and the muscle sensation is more pronounced. The wound on the hand suddenly becomes itchy. Looking down, scabs have formed at the edges, but blood is still oozing. Host. Suhan level. First level. Lower skill. None. Will contract. Apostles strengthen the body, and if apostles become stronger, they will also feed back the host, which is a good thing. However, it seems that corpses are not too strong. Suhan regained his strength and immediately summoned the apostle out. A red light appeared behind him, and the corpse immediately appeared beside him. He is slightly taller than him, about 1.9 meters, and the wound on his forehead is no longer visible. The body is bent and twisted, with slender arms but resembling animal claws. The pale skin and eerie white eyes always make people feel a strange chill. Pick up the fruit knife. He tried to manipulate the corpse with his mind, and the corpse moved as expected, reaching out to grab the fruit knife covered in blood. The corpse didn't react. Slowly and quickly grabbed the fruit knife in its hand, then its body stopped and stood straight beside Suhan. Not having too much autonomy makes it feel a bit like a tool. Although it is a summoning object, the feeling is different between having autonomous consciousness and not having autonomous consciousness. The feeling that the apostle's corpse gave him was like a robot, with clear instructions, it would act, and at other times it would be relatively sluggish, completely different from cats and dogs. However, there is also an advantage, which is that control is heart to heart, and reactions are no different from one's own actions. He looked at the fruit knife, ready to have the apostle's corpse hand him the knife. Just as my gaze fell on the knife, I was surprised to see a completely different line of prompts. Discovered fusible material. Ordinary metal, is it fusible? The Blood Spirit book does not emit light, and the prompts are completely different from the previous contract prompts. This feeling seems more intimate, as if it is one's own instinct. Is this my ability? Although it's just intuition, Suhan doesn't think it's wrong. He took a deep breath and calmed down a bit. I won't merge for now. The prompt disappeared, and he took the fruit knife from the corpse's hand, then manipulated the corpse to enter the living room. He first locked the outer door and then used a sofa to block it to prevent other corpses from breaking in on this floor. Although the possibility may not be high, it is safer to do so. The red light of the big eyeballs may not be really someone, but everyone. Those who can withstand it will receive the blood spirit book, and those who cannot withstand it may become monsters like corpses. This is a very scary thing. If fog only interrupts communication and separates the environment, the blood spirit book endows humans with extraordinary power, both of which only slightly disrupt the rhythm of order and are still within a controllable range. So if monsters may appear around at any time, it is highly likely to have a direct impact on order. To put it bluntly, if the person in charge dies and the person in charge dies, no matter how much, chaos will definitely arise. The possibility of rescue is infinitely reduced, and the only thing one can rely on is oneself. Of course, there are also apostolic corpses and my own special ability just now. He began to search for various materials in the rental house. Since the fruit knife had just appeared in the style of fusible ordinary metal materials, it was highly likely that other materials could also be used. He wanted to try this ability range. The things in the rental house are very messy, and there are many materials that can be integrated. After manipulating the apostle's corpse to pick up many things, Suhan finally chose only 4 things to put in front of him. One is a fruit knife, a pebble that was previously used as a decoration, a piece of wood, and water. The ability to merge is very powerful, and almost all relatively independent objects that can be controlled by corpses will be within the fusion range, while Suhan's own cannot. The scope of fusion can range from paper, plastic, and even food, but Suhan did not choose those things. He currently doesn't know what the fusion effect is, everything is just speculation. Compared to those outrageous things, he only chose 4 of them. The effect of fusion is still uncertain, but if it is to enhance the apostles, these 3 things may enhance strength. As for water, Suhan pondered, feeling that choosing anything was a gamble, equivalent to gambling on changes based on his current reliance. Let's stick to metal. In the end, he made a decision and his gaze fell on the fruit knife. Detected material of ordinary metal, is it fused? Fusion, the apostle's corpse tightly grasped the fruit knife in his palm, and then the visible flesh began to wriggle. Gradually, he wrapped the entire fruit knife around it and slowly integrated it into the flesh until it disappeared. It feels like it's eating up the metal. During this process, Suhan also felt a hint of power feedback from the blood spirit book. The apostle's corpse is strengthening, and he has received feedback. Apostle. Corpse strength. First level inferior skill. None fusion. 1% ordinary metal, can only fuse one material at a time, and is there any compatibility? With the initial success of fusion, Suhan received more feedback, such as this fusion. Fusion can enhance apostles, but only one material can be fused at a time, and the higher the material compatibility, the greater the increase in fusion percentage. If the compatibility is low, the fusion speed will be significantly reduced and the required materials will be greatly increased. Metal for corpses can only be said to be average. To achieve 100% fusion, it requires a steel content far exceeding that of a fruit knife. How much metal can a shared room with 2 bedrooms and 1 living room have? The outer shell of the refrigerator, the inner unit, the range hood, the washing machine, and the border frames of the tables and chairs all contained metal and could be removed, all of which were dismantled by Suhan and the apostle. In the living room, there are about 50 pounds of metal products piled up, and besides that, there are not many complete items left in the entire shared room. Let's start merging. Suhan ordered the apostle corpse to start fusing metal, which is already much more abundant than the fruit knife. It is believed that this can also increase the degree of fusion. The corpse gripped its palm on the metal, and its flesh wriggled like an earthworm, then attached to the metal and began to slowly merge. A thread of red light fed back from the blood spirit book to his body, causing his muscles to slightly bulge. This morning's wound was also gradually scabbing and healing. As a host, his power is also increasing. Although it is impossible to become a superhero in one leap, perceiving the power of the body has gradually surpassed the power of an ordinary person. Gugu, however, with the strengthening of the body, hunger quickly spread from the stomach, and becoming stronger requires energy. Suhan has not dripped water since last night until now. He walked to the kitchen and found that the refrigerator had already been dismantled by him. While searching earlier, he also scraped out a portion of the food. The quantity is not large, 4 or 5 packs of instant noodles, followed by pickled vegetables, mixed rice sauce, hanging noodles, and a few eggs, not even fruits. Not enough food. Even for ordinary people, this little food cannot last for 3 or 4 days. Taking advantage of the fact that the gas pipeline is not yet cut off, open the fire to cook noodles. The pot and kitchen knife are metal objects that Suhan has not yet fused, as they are still useful. Boiled the noodles and ate a packet, but there was no feeling of hunger. His appetite increased even more. So I cooked 2 more packets, and then I had enough to eat. We need to find a way to prepare more food. A meal already consumes half of the food, which also means that one needs to search for more supplies. Fortunately, his apostolic corpse is being strengthened, at least he has the power to go out and explore. The flesh and blood of the apostle's corpse had already wrapped up most of the metal, gradually devouring it and entering the body. The volume of metal is not small, but under this fusion, it is impossible to see where it has all gone. Only Suhan noticed that the fusion degree of ordinary metals continued to increase with fusion, gradually increasing from 1% to 50%, and was also accompanied by the gradual progress of the fusion of apostolic corpses. Suhan was not in a hurry. Although there was not much food left, the increase in apostolic corpses was more important than searching for food. He could feel that his physical strength was becoming stronger. Time passed by bit, and after about 2 hours, all the metals finally fused together, and the fusion rate gradually increased to 99%. Suhan stared closely at the final point of fusion, and after the corpse had retracted all the flesh and blood, there was finally a change point 100%. LV1 ordinary metal fusion completed, obtaining skill clause, end of this chapter. Chapter 3. Scratching Floors. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3 Scratching Floors. With the appearance of prompts, Suhan had already noticed the changes in the apostle's corpse. After the fusion of that pair of huge and ferocious palms, they gradually turned dark red, their nails became pitch black, and began to extend and deform at a visible speed to the naked eye. A few breaths passed, and the huge palm had transformed into the shape of a claw. The sharp nails were about 10 centimeters long, pitch black and sharp. When they touched each other, they made a clanging sound, as if several sharp blades were intertwined. This nail is made of metal material, and the texture is hard and extremely sharp. Suhan's gaze fell on the wood, and his mind moved. The flesh corpse's sharp claws grabbed it directly, and in an instant, most of the wood was cut off, which was a bit more powerful than ordinary machetes. The sharpness is very high, and if facing a corpse, this claw has a great effect. He was very satisfied with the strength of the claws, which meant that his apostles had an additional weapon at their disposal. No, to be more precise, its skills. Apostle. Corpse strength. First level inferior skill. Claw, fusion. LV1 ordinary metal claw is a skill, so when it is not necessary to use it, the corpse can completely retract it, giving it a slightly Wolverine-like vibe. Playing the role of a pig and eating a tiger is not enough, but if you want to plot against someone, your skills are indeed more effective than bare hands. With the completion of this fusion, Suhan also received the feedback of strength, and his body strengthened a bit, about twice the level of an ordinary person. Fusion materials can increase overall strength, and completing fusion seems to be a possible skill evolution. Additionally, there is an LV1 level marker, which means further fusion can be achieved. Suhan pondered his own abilities. Since the fusion of ordinary metals has reached LV1 level, testing other materials in a short period of time did not provide a clear understanding of ordinary metals. With this thought in mind, he went straight to the kitchen and took out 2 knives. The kitchen knives are shared, one is a kitchen knife and the other is also a kitchen knife, but the thickness and weight are different, and they are used for chopping bones and meat. The bone-chopping kitchen knife was left by him. Although it was protected by corpses, he also needed to have preventive measures, so he also needed weapons. Another light and thin kitchen knife was placed by him in front of the apostle and ordered to be caught. Sure enough, as he expected, the fusion prompt jumped out. Discovery of ordinary metal materials, whether fusion should be carried out, integrate, blood and flesh wriggled, slowly wrapping the kitchen knife again, constantly devouring and fusing metal substances. Soon, only the plastic handle was thrown onto the ground. LV1 ordinary metal 0.5%, is there more demand? Fusion is fusion, but the increasing degree of integration is different. However, this is still expected as there have been changes. There was already not enough metal in the room for the apostles to devour, and there was not enough food left. In fact, Suhan had only one option to search for supplies. Alibaba convenience store and Lihua supermarket are not located in the community, and the outside is covered in this kind of fog, making it very dangerous to go out. It seems like we need to search for supplies on the floor first. Suhan held a kitchen knife and found a solid backpack in his room, ready to go out. He lives on the 7th floor of Building 10, with a floor structure of 2 elevators and 6 households, which means there are 6 households on the 1st floor. The population in the 1st floor is not very dense, even if there are those who turn into corpses, there won't be too many. Get ready and move the sofa that is blocking the door away. The corridor was dimly lit, and when the big eyeballs appeared, it seemed that the entire city had problems with electricity and signals, so the lights in the corridor were all off. If it weren't for the day, there would still be a slight glimmer of light coming in here from somewhere. I'm afraid it would have been pitch black long ago. Suhan's room is the last one on the 7th floor, so he is not worried that a monster will suddenly appear behind him. He pushed the corpse to the front and followed behind with a kitchen knife in his hand. Creak, 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 a faint chewing sound suddenly sounded, and Suhan's expression tightened. He clenched the kitchen knife in his hand and looked down the aisle from behind the corpse. A hunched figure was squatting on the ground, swaying slightly, and his abnormally twisted arm was constantly grabbing what was in front of him. The chewing sound is what it comes from, and when its arms are lifted, there is also a ticking sound. Suddenly, the figure's movements froze and she noticed something slowly turning around, her pale eyes tinged with eerie coldness. Suhan finally saw its appearance clearly, with sparse hair and a ferocious appearance. Its mouth was full of sharp teeth, and it was clearly a corpse. It rushed forward, hand and foot in hand, like a galloping beast, and attacked Suhan directly. The aisle is not particularly long, only over 30 meters long. Without taking a breath or two, it has already rushed to the front of it. The corpse leaped high and pounced directly at Suhan's apostle, with a bloody smell emanating from his body. It seems that these instinctive corpses can distinguish between apostles and their own kind, so the attack becomes even more fierce. Bang! The apostle punched fiercely and threw himself out, pressing the corpse to the ground in one fell swoop. The corpses kept flapping, their claws constantly gripping the apostles, leaving subtle wounds. However, its body size is not large, only about 1.56 meters, more like a child turned into a corpse. In terms of power, it cannot compare to the apostles who have already been enhanced, and at this point, the apostles' fingers and claws become pitch black, extending sharp black nails like knives. With a popping sound, it plunged directly into the corpse's head, then grabbed it hard and shattered its brain, completely losing its sound. Manipulating the apostle to kill a corpse, Suhan's gaze fell to the end of the corridor, where there was still a lump of something lying, vaguely in the shape of a human. Throwing the short corpse aside, Suhan approached the end of the aisle under the protection of the apostles. The anti-theft door of the room at the end was not closed, and the door was stained with large amounts of blood and flesh. The bloody figure stood in front of the door, a woman with her chest and abdominal cavity covered in blood and flesh. Although he was ready to welcome the end of the world, when such a bloody scene appeared in front of him and the strong smell of blood filled every corner, Suhan still felt uncomfortable and his face turned slightly pale. However, after a slight strengthening of the body, there was no nausea to the extent of vomiting. "Rest in peace." He whispered a sentence, then stepped over the body, pushed open the anti-theft door, and walked in. The entrance foyer was in a mess, with items on both sides falling to the ground, and the smell of blood also permeated the room. He looked towards the living room connected to the entrance, where there was a male corpse lying there, with his neck bitten to pieces. However, the body had not yet been bitten, and a pool of blood surrounded the entire body. "It's a pity that the whole family went neatly." Suhan sighed. In fact, he had already guessed what had happened. This should be a family of 3. Only the child mutated, while both parents obtained the Book of Blood Spirit. The sudden mutation is something that few people can react to, let alone face their loved ones turning into monsters. If it weren't for that door, he wouldn't be confident about dealing with his roommate who turned into a zombie. And this situation becomes even more difficult in front of family members, with very few people being able to decisively and without hesitation take action against them. A family of 3 should also be similar. Dad wanted to drag the child into a zombie and let Mom run for help, but in the end, they all didn't run away and died. He came to the side of the body and pulled off the bloody blanket from the sofa, covering the man's body. If he works hard, a man may be able to control the corpse, but he doesn't. A family of 3 should have a little more food left. Suhan manipulated the apostle corpse to push open all the doors of the room, including the master bedroom, guest bedroom, and children's room, and even 2 bathrooms, to be wary of other monsters. After ruling out the risk, he began to search for supplies, starting from the kitchen. Pots, bowls, ladles, and pots, including a range hood and dishwasher, contain metal substances, and Suhan directly allows the apostle's corpse to merge. In the refrigerator and cabinet, there is indeed a stock of food, a bag of 20 pounds of rice, with about 11 or 12 pounds left. There is also a large piece of beef, pig bones, and a handful of vegetables in the refrigerator. Save the food and pack it into the backpack, while Suhan continues to search for other useful things in the room while the apostle's corpse is still fusing metal. The tables and chairs in the living room are made of wooden furniture, with no metal to blend with corpses. There is a fishing rod in the storage cabinet, which looks expensive and should be a unique item for fishermen. If it were a typical post-apocalypse, perhaps it would still be useful for fishing, but now the fog is so thick that I don't know what I've eaten as bait. Who knows if it's a person fishing or a monster fishing for a person. I didn't take the fishing rod, but Suhan took away a large bundle of fishing thread. Although I don't know what to use for now, the silk thread will eventually come in handy. When he arrived at the master bedroom, he rummaged through boxes and cabinets, opened a small drawer, and his eyes lit up. "Do you have a good sense of family medicine?" Inside the small drawer are medicines, commonly available items such as fever and cold medicine, disinfectant alcohol, iodine, and some gauze, all of which are quite useful. After packing up the medicine and returning to the living room, the whole house had been searched almost everywhere, and now Suhan was waiting for the meat corpse to merge with the metal. Blood and flesh wriggled, and half of the metal was fused in, with a faster speed compared to the previous fusion fruit knife. The enhancement of the strength of the corpse, as well as the successful fusion of ordinary metal once, has given it a slight boost. Slowly increasing from 0.5% to 2% and 5%, Suhan waited for another hour before finally reaching a fusion level of 15%. The previous fusion only weighed a few tens of kilograms, but now it has only increased by 15%. The demand is really not small. The percentage is not entirely proportional, as the demand increases as we move forward. Based on the current situation, the second fusion will require several £100 as a foundation. If it's really not possible, then take action on the elevator. Slowly integrating elevators is not a wise choice, as it means spending more time in the hallway. Although he has increased his strength a bit, he is not a superhero and will die if attacked by corpses. Suhan walked along the second room with the corpse, his sharp metal claws breaking through the thin iron anti-theft door. The anti-theft door is not thick, so the metal claws can be broken down under strong force. Although there was some noise, it was always faster than slowly merging. Breaking through the door, there were no people or corpses in the room, and the homeowner may have gone out. Women's clothes and bags were everywhere, and the kitchen was empty with only a few bags of instant noodles. Not many supplies have been found, and all that can be used is the dismantled metal, which weighs several tens of kilograms. However, this time, he had no intention of continuing to merge here, but instead sent the things back to his room first. Fusion takes time, and his search for supplies also takes time. 7 buildings have already lost power, or in other words, the entire city is probably not much different. Slowly merging, I'm afraid that by the time the third house is built, it will be dark and the hallway will be completely blurred. The metal was transported back, along with the anti-theft door, which was also dismantled and carried back directly. Then we continued to explore 2 rooms, one with nothing and the other with 2 corpses, probably an old man and an old lady, with a ferocious and bloodthirsty appearance. The apostles' corpses fought against each other, while Suhan hid behind him. After one turn, with his metal claws, the apostle successfully killed them. As time passed, Suhan also arrived in front of the last house besides his rented one. The old trick was repeated, and the apostle's corpse broke open the anti-theft door and pushed it in. Suddenly, a figure rushed forward with a resounding sound, and the corpse slapped it, flying it away. Ouch! A painful cry suddenly rang out. It was a person, not a corpse. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Survivors. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4 Survivors. The apostle's corpse squeezed in and blocked the entrance, with a tall figure that completely covered Suhan. The man lying on the ground felt pain, but he endured it and shouted, "May you, run." There is another woman in the room, holding a knife in her hand. Although the man called her to run quickly, she gritted her teeth and threw the knife with all her strength. Then I went to pull the man up and prepare to escape into the room. Resounding, the knife was directly knocked out by the corpse of the apostle, and it bent down, grabbed the hair of the man and woman, and pressed it against the wall. "Don't kill them." Suhan's voice came, and the man and woman, who were almost in despair, showed a shocked expression, widened their eyes, and hurriedly said, You are human." "No, you are not. This is your apostle. Don't kill us, this is a misunderstanding." The man spoke incoherently, and Suhan's expression was calm. He just said, "Be honest and cooperate, don't struggle." He had the apostles capture the 2 of them into the living room, and after fusing a lot of metal materials, their power was much stronger than that of ordinary humans. The 2 were unarmed and could not resist, and they dared not resist. Suhan closed the door and then entered the living room. The living room is a desk-less living room with only a large sofa against the wall and a few small chairs, opposite to which is a wall-mounted TV. The man and woman were thrown onto the sofa by the apostles, and the apostles stood in the middle. Suhan pulled a chair and sat opposite them. He carefully examined the 2 of them, curled up on the sofa, trembling slightly, but holding each other's hands. Damn dog food. The man looks in his 30s, with a slightly chubby square face and not much hair, wearing a pair of glasses. The woman's appearance is quite good, with slightly yellow short hair hanging down to the shoulders, a white tight top, jeans, clean and neat, and a quite plump figure. Just now, there was a misunderstanding. Are you the young man next door? We thought you were those monsters just now. What's your name and profession? Suhan interrupted the man's words and suddenly asked. Xinglei, a computer engineer. What about you? Suhan pointed to the woman and gestured for her to answer the question. Yan Meiyu, an administrative staff member of a real estate agency, is his girlfriend. Yan Meiyu's voice is not as loud as Xinglei's, but she doesn't have much vibrato. She seems to be more calm. Handsome guy, there's still some meat in the fridge, and there are a few bags of noodles and rice in the cabinet. If you need it, we can give you half. She tried to soften Suhan with a negotiating tone, which was a good solution. After all, the mutation has just happened less than a day ago, and whether it's the two of them or Suhan himself, their subconscious sense of order and inner ethical morality are still barely being maintained. She also saw that Suhan came out to search for supplies, and the swollen backpack was proof. It was because of this that she planned to use supplies to resolve the current situation. However, Suhan shook his head, which made Yan Meiyu's face turn pale. I'm afraid the next moment Suhan across from me will say. Kill you, everything belongs to him. Such words. I don't want the meat anymore, but I'll split the rice and noodles in half, and help me sort out the iron utensils in your house. It'll be my hard work to clean this floor. He spoke calmly, with a slight smile on his face, but his tone was beyond doubt. He's not crazy, he kills people easily, which is a bit excessive. After all, in theory, it was he who advanced the couple's house. Of course, this is not important either. What's important is that Xinglei left a good impression on him. After all, he still protects his girlfriend in a critical moment, so he can still be a good person. It's just the occasional brief noise at night, which is a bit disturbing to the people. It's not a crime to death, anyway, the time is not long. Of course, if there are any bad thoughts, then it's no wonder he's throwing ashes at his bones. The two of them were momentarily stunned, but their reactions were quick. They nodded repeatedly and said, this is what we should do. We'll help out right now. They don't know why Suhan needs iron tools, even if they have guesses, they won't ask. However, Suhan is not worried that his fusion ability will be known, after all, the changes in the form of apostles will eventually be noticed. So deliberately hiding is not necessary, as long as the true details are not disclosed. Xinglei and Yan Meiyu acted quickly, and the demolition of the house was even more thorough than Suhan himself. Not only were there tables, chairs, benches with metal frames, refrigerators, and dishwashers, but they also took out nail clippers and eyebrow trimmers without letting go. Handsome guy, it's all here now. I actually have a Tesla in my garage, which is not light in weight, but now it's foggy and there are many monsters in the hallway, so I can't go. Help me move to the next door, keep it quiet, I don't guarantee there will be any corpses wandering on other floors. Xinglei was sweating profusely, and Yan Meiyu was also tired. However, when Suhan spoke, they dared not have any complaints. Under the supervision of Suhan and the corpses of the apostles, they moved their belongings to the neighboring shared apartment of Suhan. In the living room, there were already piles of collected supplies, and as you could see, there were piles of metal. Food was placed in the kitchen, and empty containers were filled with water. Yan Meiyu secretly scanned the room and said to herself, this guy has indeed collected the entire layer of supplies. Shouldn't this metal be related to the contract monster? She and Xinglei both obtained the Book of Blood Spirit, but they dared not come out because they saw the ferocity of the flesh corpse through the crack in the door with their own eyes. There are no weapons in hand, and neither of the young couple has received special training. It is not easy to win against a corpse, and if they are seriously injured and cannot be handled well, it will be fatal. Beautiful Jade, Xinglei tugged at Yan Meiyu's hem, calling her to come to her senses, but he dared not provoke this person. The innermost door in the house had a lot of blood stains, and in his impression, Suhan was a roommate, but now his roommate is missing. There is only one truth: this handsome guy killed his roommate. Be good, it's a wolf extermination. It's not that his roommate turned into a monster and couldn't be killed, but rather a change in mindset and decisiveness in his actions, which made him instinctively feel that Suhan couldn't be provoked. For example, if Yan Meiyu turned into a corpse, even if he could have beaten her, could he have killed her in the first place? Absolutely not. So, Suhan is a tough person with strong adaptability and decisive actions, just like those wolf exterminators in the workplace. They are not easy to deal with. Yan Meiyu knew what her boyfriend meant, and she shook her head slightly, indicating that she knew the importance. After moving the things, Suhan had no intention of continuing to make things difficult for the two of them. I cleared the 7th floor, but there are no other floors. It's best to block the door. Xinglei hesitated to speak, but you broke the lock on the door. Got it, got it. By the way, handsome guy, what's your name? Suhan. The two of them came out of Suhan's place and returned to the next door 7705, closing the door tightly and holding it back. They both breathed a sigh of relief. Meiyu, our food may not last for 2 days. Xinglei's face was not very good, and Yan Meiyu held his hand and comforted him, saying, it's good for people to have nothing, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. Suhan's dominance did indeed cause them to lose half of their food. There are naturally areas of unhappiness in their hearts, but both of them are adults, and if they can't compete, they just have to lower their heads. Moreover, when it comes to calculation, Suhan doesn't seem like a bad person. Old Gon, do you think we have any strengths? End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Second Fusion. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5 Second Fusion. Suhan locked his room door and used a sofa to support it before returning to the living room. Encountering survivors is a matter of time. After all, it is impossible for everyone to become monsters or be killed by monsters. However, to his surprise, the couple next door, Xinglei and Yan Meiyu, were both unharmed. Observing and observing again, it's better not to be a troublemaker, otherwise I really can take action. Life is not a novel. There is no normal person who would kill people everywhere as soon as they enter the apocalypse, unless it is a pervert who already wants to kill. Suhan walked towards the corner of the living room, dug out a candle from the drawer, and lit it inside the living room, gradually illuminating the dimly lit room. The fog is still shrouded outside the building, and the lighting was not very good originally. Now it is estimated that the time is gradually approaching 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and natural lighting is not good. Continue to fuse metals. The living room is filled with metal products that were dismantled from several rooms today, and there are even 2 or 3 anti-theft door panels. There are probably hundreds of pounds in total, enough for the apostle's flesh to merge. I saw the flesh and blood of the apostle wriggling and gradually coming into contact with the metal, slowly merging with it. The fusion degree of the attribute panel has also slowly increased from 15% to 15.1% and 15.2%, respectively. The slight feedback of strengthening also integrated into Suhan's body, like a warm current flowing through his body, making the feeling more pronounced. The sense of connection in back feeding is not only present during fusion, but can also be vaguely felt in normal times, so enhancement has been progressing slowly. The stronger sense of connection made Suhan have more associations. There is a connection between the blood spirit book and monsters, and the method of becoming stronger is not explicitly stated, which is somewhat difficult to grasp. But now it seems that natural enhancement and feedback exist, and the drive of the apostles can to some extent increase this feedback connection. Simply put, it means accumulating experience or energy faster to reach the next level of strength. Other apostles can also enhance, and the speed is hard to say, but the longer the time, the more powerful people will definitely be, so the integration process needs to be intensified a bit. Suhan pondered and went to the kitchen, preparing to cook. He turned on the gas stove, divided the large pieces of beef he found and put them into a pot. At the same time, he put in most of the big stick bones and pork ribs and cooked them into a pot of stew. There are many meat ingredients found, which is also one of the most likely foods to be stored in everyone's refrigerator. After all, life is becoming more and more convenient, and meat can also be frozen, but vegetables and fruits are usually bought and eaten right away. The light and shadow of the stove flickered slightly, illuminating the location of the kitchen vaguely. The gas pipeline still has gas, but it should also stop soon. We need to be more prepared. Suhan looked at the boiling meat soup pot, his thoughts spinning in his heart. Suddenly, he entered the end of the world, and everything became too fast. There was too much missing information, so he could only take one step at a time. The only things that can establish oneself are the Book of Blood and Spirit and the Apostles. However, even with this endowed ability, little is known and more exploration is needed. He muttered, perhaps we can ask someone to help us explore the way. In about 40 minutes, the stew was done and a pot was full of meat. With simple seasoning, he brought it to the living room. The apostolic corpses are still fusing a large amount of metal, wrapped in flesh and blood, and gradually integrating into their bodies. The fusion rate has risen to 23% and continues to increase. As Suhan felt the power of backfeeding, he began to eat dinner, devouring meat and filling his stomach. The most intuitive feeling of physical enhancement is actually hunger, and the demand for energy is greater than usual for oneself. If it's normal, I'm afraid that only 1/3 of the meat in this pot will be too much to eat. But half an hour later, Suhan actually ate 80.9% of the meat, which was enough to fill his stomach. Throw the pot into the kitchen, and in the living room there are only his and the apostles' corpses left. The candlelight flickered slightly, dim and unclear. As time goes by, it should be at night, without candles, the entire room will also become extremely dim. Vaguely, outside the window and between buildings, roars and screams occasionally sounded, and even the sound of car alarms kept ringing in the distance. This is a night of the beginning of the apocalypse. No matter how slow or timid one is, someone will always start taking action. After all, in modern cities, those who are accustomed to a fast-paced lifestyle may not necessarily have the habit of storing a large amount of food. Some people want to save themselves, while others think of hunting monsters and corpses to activate their blood spirit book. However, to obtain it, one must pay a corresponding price, which is usually extremely dangerous. There are still about 300 to 500 pounds of metal in the room, and fusion will take a long time. Suhan completely blocked the main entrance in order to preserve his state, and then he squinted his eyes and fell asleep next to the corpse of the apostle. One night passed, the candles burned out, and Suhan woke up in a daze. He rubbed his sleepy eyes, and the room had a faint, hazy appearance. LV2 ordinary metal fusion completed, obtaining skill iron skin. 9 out of 10 times the metal in the living room was fused, and when the second fusion was completed, the appearance of the apostle's corpse changed once again. The height has increased from 2 meters to about 2.2 meters, with reddened muscles becoming more swollen and hard. The metal claws extending from the fingers are sharper and a bit longer. At the same time, the pitch-black metal has grown backwards to the back of the hand, becoming more prominent. In addition, beneath the muscles, the pitch-black color gradually surged and attached to the skin, like metallic skin. In an instant, the entire corpse turned into a pitch-black color, dark and cold, much different from its previous brutal appearance. When Suhan touched it, he felt a chill, and the texture seemed to be no different from the iron sheet. Resounding, picking up a kitchen knife and chopping it up, a slight white mark remained on it, and the iron skin was just as it was named, without hurting any of its muscles. He felt a sense of joy in his heart. As a result, his apostle's defense was greatly enhanced, with both attack and defense increased by 1 section, and his strength should not be underestimated. Although iron skin is not an absolute defense, it is naturally more powerful than ordinary corpses. Apostle. Corpse level. First level medium skills. Claw, iron skin, fusion. LV2 ordinary metal on the panel. The strength of the apostles changed, and the power of feedback flowing into Suhan's body suddenly increased by a few points. Muscles and bones sing together, muscles stretch, and the body is filled with powerful force, with warm currents flowing throughout the body. Feeling the strength of his body, he became more agile and powerful. Even without deliberate exercise, he estimated that he could easily lift 200 or 300 pounds of something, and perhaps his strength would be even greater. Suhan was about to move a sofa and feel it better when suddenly a strange feeling arose in his heart. His consciousness instantly entered the consciousness space, which was already an endless pitch-black space, as well as the blood-red spirit book standing in the middle. A book page surrounds the blood spirit book, standing in the distance, with the design of the apostle's corpse on it. The pages turned into the flesh of the apostle and suddenly moved, with red energies emerging within him like flowing meridians. A familiar yet unfamiliar memory flooded into Suhan's consciousness, and instinctively he followed suit by operating this force, constantly modifying it to fit his body. I don't know how long it took, but suddenly the sound system came on. Successful realization, synchronized skill, iron skin, end of this chapter. Chapter 6. A bowl of noodles. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. A bowl of noodles. Coming out of the consciousness space, Suhan was still somewhat surprised. He could clearly feel that synchronization was not necessarily due to his own abilities, but rather the skills of the apostles could have been synchronized, as long as he could perceive success. If that's the case, human strength won't be limited to physical fitness anymore. The more time we delay, the more powerful people may appear. After a moment of contemplation, Suhan knew that this situation was a double-edged sword. The probability of human survival would increase, but the stronger the individual's strength, the more thorough the disruption of order would be. However, this is a good thing for him because the existence of fusion ability allows him to acquire more skills. Perhaps, in the apocalypse, one can actually have an unimaginable position in the past. Dong dong dong, the door was suddenly knocked on, and Suhan's expression froze. He instantly activated his iron skin and his body turned dark. The apostle's corpse also changed and stood in front of him, facing the entrance. Suhan, it's me and Meiyu. It was Xinglei's voice, and the person was right outside the door. What's going on? In the morning, Meiyu cooked more noodles. Let's bring you a portion together. Suhan was somewhat surprised, but after a moment of contemplation, he thought of something. At the same time, he dispersed his iron skin and ordered the apostles to go and open the door. The apostle moved the sofa behind the door and then opened it. Outside the door, both Xinglei and Yan Meiyu were outside, with Xinglei holding a bowl of noodles in his hand. Come on in. The apostle's corpse was in front of the two, leading them through the entrance, always keeping a distance between Suhan and them. Although Suhan's strength has advanced and he has also synchronized a life-saving skill, being cautious is not a problem. Xinglei and Yan Meiyu peeked into the living room and found that the hundreds of pounds of metal from yesterday had now disappeared in 9 out of 10. They thought to themselves, indeed, they are not ordinary people. This is the noodles that were just cooked in the morning, with simple conditions and no side dishes. Xinglei placed the noodles on the coffee table in the living room, and the two stood on the side of the sofa with a low attitude. The noodles are steaming hot, just like ordinary hanging noodles. They have just been cooked and drizzled with a little soy sauce and some sesame oil, which is quite good. You two can also sit down. Suhan sat across from her, the two of them sitting on the sofa with a somewhat reserved appearance, but Yan Meiyu remained a bit calm. Helping cook noodles early in the morning, it's hard work. He said it was hard, but he didn't meet the noodles and looked at the two of them. Xinglei and Yan Meiyu are both people who have been working in society for a long time, so they naturally know what it means. In the Taiping world, when buying takeout, people are worried about the food delivery staff or the kitchen spitting, not to mention the end of the world now. Of course, noodles are not important, they are the reason for today. Suhan, you're a smart person, and I won't beat around the bush anymore. I don't know how many monsters are out there in this situation, so rescue may not necessarily be possible. The two of us just want to form a team with you and help each other. Xinglei expressed his intention and added at the end, you are a capable person. We are teaming up with you to seek a way out, whether it is to fight or help carry things, there is no problem. Although there are books of blood spirit, it is actually quite difficult to defeat a monster like Suhan. There is more than one monster, and even if one contracts with an apostle, it is not necessarily that their apostle's flesh corpse can be more powerful than ordinary flesh corpses. If they are besieged, they will still die. There are many people, forming a group is the most likely way to survive. Suhan didn't speak yet, just pondering. Collecting materials on his own is slow, and some things are indeed inconvenient to move. Having more people is beneficial. Just with people and material distribution, we need to pay more attention to some things, both advantages and disadvantages. Yan Meiyu saw him pondering and suddenly spoke, his voice soft but clear. Although Lao Gan is a programmer, he often runs outsourced projects and knows how to drive. There is also an SUV in our downstairs parking lot, which was just filled up with gas the day before yesterday. He can be a driver. I used to work as an intermediary salesperson, and I often run in the real estate area. I am familiar with the environment in this area, and if I really need to transfer, I can also help. Suhan glanced at Yan Meiyu more, not because her sister in-law was beautiful, but because she had something in her heart and had worked as a salesperson before. In a few words, explain your useful areas clearly. Yan Meiyu paused and said, and I also know some news. Suhan frowned and said, let's talk about it. There may be a gathering of survivors or a large number of monsters in the lobby of the first floor. Suhan's face showed surprise and asked, how do you know this news? Yan Meiyu replied, we are the homeowners. Yesterday morning, many people in the homeowner group were on the first floor watching the fog and joining in the fun. When she said this, Suhan understood. With many people gathered together, regardless of the mutation rate, there would definitely be corpses produced. If a person kills a zombie, then there will naturally be survivors gathering. If the zombie kills all the survivors, then there will definitely be a considerable number of monsters. After the big eyeballs appeared yesterday, the first floor was a large chicken-eating venue. Do you still have a backpack in your room? Suhan suddenly asked a question, and Xinglei was taken aback for a moment. He immediately looked happy and nodded quickly, some of them are available. I usually use backpacks for business trips, and there are several, including hiking bags. You go back and tidy up first, I'll take you to the corridor to tidy up. Today, we'll go down and clean up the floors. Yan Meiyu was taken aback for a moment, then nodded and said, okay, thank you. Suhan agreed that he had saved their lives, at least by reducing the danger a lot. This is a gesture of kindness. Due to limited time, the three of them decided to form a team and did not continue chatting. According to the division of labor, Yan Meiyu went back to pick up her backpack first. And Suhan brought Xinglei to the end of the 7th floor corridor, where he killed the corpse yesterday. Nausea, just as he approached, Xinglei couldn't bear the smell of blood and stench and leaned against the wall to vomit. His face turned pale, his stomach was already in turmoil, and his legs couldn't help but tremble. He lived for almost half a lifetime and it was the first time he had seen someone with an empty stomach. Suhan patted his back and said, get used to it. There will be more opportunities to see this kind of thing in the future. There is a corpse over there. Can you try to make a contract? He pointed to the flesh corpse next to the woman's body, which was killed by his apostle yesterday. Xinglei wiped away the vomit from the corner of his mouth, feeling bitter in his heart. Little brother, what you said was easy, who could be so calm as you? I'll try my best. Does Suhan need any ceremony? Just call me Suhan. If there's no ceremony, you can try it out. Although Suhan was a contracted apostle, he had only a partial understanding of many things, so he also needed a reference point. Teaming is convenient for searching, but also with this consideration in mind. Xinglei regained his strength and then squatted beside the corpse, muttering softly, "I'm sorry." He covered his hand on the corpse and tried to communicate with the red blood spirit book on his hand, but after a long time, there was no response. He looked at Suhan behind him in confusion, shook his head, and said, "Suhan, it seems like it's not working." "The meat corpse that was killed is not good." Suhan pondered for a moment and compared it to the situation where he killed his roommate. He said, "I guess what's going on. You need to kill a meat corpse yourself. Go home first and get a kitchen knife or iron stick, and you'll do it later." Returning to Xinglei and his family's house, Yan Meiyu had already found her backpack. She prepared a hiking bag for Xinglei and a regular backpack for herself. "You go to my place and use some kitchen knives as weapons. You'll need to clean up the corpses later." Yan Meiyu was taken aback and looked at Xinglei's expression. She nodded and said, "I'll go prepare now." End of this chapter. Chapter 7. The Apostles of Xinglei. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. The Apostles of Xinglei. A bone-chopping kitchen knife, with a book wrapped around the forearm, looks somewhat comical, but it is undoubtedly a more effective equipment than a thin assault suit. Xinglei and Yan Meiyu both have the same attire, which is the most suitable equipment they have learned from practice and movies. Although meat corpses are not zombies or viruses, biting them can still be fatal. The sound of footsteps echoed in the hallway, with the apostle walking first, followed by Xinglei, Yan Meiyu, and Suhan. Since it is a team, Suhan has no intention of letting Xinglei and Yan Meiyu come to the forefront as a shield. The arrival of the corpses is just a sacrifice in vain. As for him walking at the back, it was just a small caution. The corridor was pitch black, much dimmer than the hallway. Xinglei, holding a small flashlight in one hand and a bone-chopping knife in the other, carefully followed the apostle's corpse. In the dark corridor, not only the sound of footsteps, but also the sound of breathing are clearly visible. The three of them walked past the first turntable, and suddenly a black shadow appeared in front of them, roaring low like a wild beast rushing towards them. Xinglei was startled and flashed a flashlight, revealing a corpse with a bent back, sharp claws and teeth, and a bloody mouth. It's a surprise lightning flint, but the first one is the apostle's corpse. With one big hand supporting it, I grabbed my twisted arm and smashed it hard, hitting the wall of the hallway with a muffled bang. "Don't kill it, hold it down." When Suhan's command came, the apostle's corpse began to move. Instead of using its claws, it activated its iron skin, with black energy flowing through it. Then it strode forward and its fist, covered in pitch-black iron skin, smashed towards the corpse's body. With a muffled sound, the struggling corpse was punched to the ground again, and under this heavy blow, it was feared that the sternum had already broken quite a bit. Just the ferocity kept the corpse roaring, but the next moment the apostle's corpse stepped on it, broke its arm, bent down, twisted its other paw, and pressed it to the ground. "Kill it." Suhan's voice came, and Xinglei's body trembled slightly. He agreed, "I'll go right away." Killing, or rather killing a monster transformed from a human, is a challenge for Xinglei. He just understood that as long as he wanted to survive in the apocalypse, it was impossible to avoid things. He wants to survive, and he also has Yan Meiyu to protect, so he must take this step. To some extent, having Suhan's help was already a stroke of luck for them. Roar! He approached the corpse, and a deep roar kept coming. The corpse was constantly struggling and wriggling. He took a deep breath, then lifted his bone-chopping knife and fiercely slashed at the corpse's head. 1, 2, 3 times. The blood from the corpse splattered onto his face, with a strong smell of blood that made him want to vomit. He was chopping his head in his hand, feeling as if he was chopping a pig's bones, hard to handle. However, as the knife continued to fall, the roar quickly decreased. The blood spirit book in Gan Xinglei's hand lit up with a red light, and at this moment he stopped moving and looked at the killed corpse. Contract. After he conveyed the intention of the contract, the red light quickly enveloped the corpse, turning it into a red light that blended into the pages of the blood spirit book. Gan Xinglei could feel the strengthening of his body, and an excited expression flashed in his eyes. Suhan, may you, I succeeded. As he spoke, his mind moved and the book of blood spirit in his hand lit up, and then his apostles appeared in front of everyone. He is about 1.8 meters tall, with pale skin and a twisted and grotesque face. His hunched spine and terrifying slender claws make him shudder. He is much shorter in stature than Suhan's apostles, and his strength is clearly inferior. Suhan asked, "How do you feel?" "I can control this monster, apostle, and it seems that my body has become stronger and my lower back is no longer painful." Suhan. "Did I ask you this?" Gan Xinglei was originally a programmer, working overtime every day. At the age of only 27 or 8, he already looked like he was in his 30s, and it is understandable that his physical strengthening has transformed into health. Control your apostle, then you go to the front. Encountering a corpse in the hallway was an unexpected event, and it is likely that the sound from the 7th floor yesterday attracted it. Gan Xinglei's excitement subsided, and he had no other unusual thoughts. He wiped off the blood-stained body and nodded, saying, "I control it in front." The three of them continued downstairs, walked through the fire door, and arrived at the 6th floor. As soon as they arrived here, the smell of blood had already spread. In the dimly lit corridor, there was a strong smell and the sound of chewing was faintly visible. Step on, with the sound of footsteps, the chewing stopped abruptly. The corpses at the end of the hallway suddenly stood up, turned around, and opened their sharp mouths with low growls. Then, they quickly charged towards the three of them with their hands and feet. "Stop them." After killing the corpse with his own hands, Gan Xinglei seemed to have some courage and was not afraid. He controlled his apostle's corpse and rushed forward. Although he became an apostle, he didn't have an advantage with a dozen or two. He crazily pressed against the two corpses and then grabbed their heads with his claws, leaving behind wounds. At the same time, the biting of the two corpses caused a large number of wounds to appear on Gan Xinglei's apostles. "Take action and kill one of them." Suhan controlled his apostle's corpse to stride forward, his sharp metal claws extending out and grabbing the corpse's arm that was being squeezed towards him at the other end. With a resounding sound, the arm was directly severed, the incision was clean and sharp, and a large amount of blood gushed out. Roar! The corpse was even crazier, but in response, the apostle's corpse wrapped its iron skin in another heavy punch, directly smashing half of its head. "Be careful behind." Suddenly, Yan Meiyu exclaimed in surprise, and Suhan suddenly turned around. A pair of faint red dots appeared at the end of the corridor on the other side. The flashlight shone over, and the creaking and rubbing sound came. It turned out to be a giant mouse over half a meter tall, with decaying back skin and bone visible, and sharp teeth and claws. The giant mouse pounced directly at the two people, faster than the speed of the corpses, and in the blink of an eye, it arrived not far in front of them. At this point, both Suhan's apostles and Gan Xinglei's apostles were at the front, with a distance between them, and Yan Meiyu and Suhan blocking them. The charge was already half a beat slow. Suhan remained calm in his heart, his eyes cold as he thought to himself, "Your grandfather." I saw him instantly use his iron skin, and his skin turned pitch black in an instant. The giant mouse leaped high, with crimson eyes, and was about to pounce on Suhan, who was closest to it. But seeing that Suhan was in a crisis and remained calm in the face of danger, he took a step forward and directly chopped with a bone-chopping knife. It was really a sharp cut, hitting the giant rat's front paw with one strike, and it fell directly to the ground. The giant mouse was struck in mid-air, lost its balance, fell to the ground with a thud, and then limped with another leg. It suffered pain and began to flutter wildly, squeaking and screaming as if going crazy. Suhan was about to step forward, but Yan Meiyu took a step faster because the giant mouse landed closer. In a moment of danger, she burst out with all her strength and fiercely slashed the bone-chopping knife. With a hissing sound, half of the head of the giant mouse, which was the size of a sea bowl, was chopped off, and the foul-smelling blood splattered all over the ground. Suhan was stunned. Is this woman so fierce? Pushi, on the other side, the corpse of Apostle Suhan twisted and severed the corpse controlled by Apostle Gan Xinglei, lifting the crisis. Is Meiyu okay? Gan Xinglei was shocked when he saw his girlfriend sitting on the ground with a knife, and he strode forward to help her, looking anxious. After several calls, Yan Meiyu finally regained her composure and said, "Old Gan." There was a crying tone in her words, but she didn't cry. The man felt uncomfortable seeing such a bloody scene for the first time, let alone her. Suhan calmed down and suddenly said, "Let's make a contract first. I haven't seen this giant mouse yet, and it happened to be you who killed it. Since Yan Meiyu did it herself, there's no need to catch another corpse and give her a contract. And this giant mouse has never been seen before. If it were contracted, it could also serve as a reference." Yan Meiyu nodded silently, then closed her eyes slightly and began the contract. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Survivors. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8 Survivors. The red light enveloped the corpse of the giant mouse, along with its severed limbs, and then merged into the pages of the Blood Spirit book. After the fusion was completed, Yan Meiyu opened her eyes and took the initiative to say, "The contract was successful, it's a rotten skin rat." With a thought in her mind, the giant mouse that was half a meter long reappeared before the three of them. This rotting skin mouse doesn't count as its tail. It looks half a meter long just by looking at it. If we add its tail, it's almost a meter long and can already catch up with some ordinary dogs. My body has also strengthened, but the changes are not particularly significant, but it seems that this rotting skin rat has a skill. Yan Meiyu secretly glanced at Suhan and thought to herself, Suhan seems to have a skill, but he looks even more powerful. Suhan looked at Yan Meiyu in surprise and asked, "What skill?" Yan Meiyu did not conceal that since she has formed a team, sharing information is one of the best ways to build trust. Rot poison, weak, its claws and bites will carry rot poison. If not handled properly, it can cause infection and poisoning. Gan Xinglei muttered and interjected, "Is the Komodo giant lizard similar?" Suhan nodded and said, "You let the rotted skin rat explore the way. My apostle is following the second one, and old Gan's apostle is at the end. Okay, leave it to me later." A simple exploration, the performance of Yan Meiyu and Gan Xinglei both established basic trust in the team, and this arrangement can improve efficiency even more. In the 6-story building, 3 households had their front doors open, and there were obvious blood stains and impact marks on the doors, indicating that they were obviously made by monsters. Yan Meiyu controlled the rotted skin rat to approach the nearest door, bypassing the corpses on the ground and reaching the outside. The closer you get, the more obvious the marks on this door become, and you can still vaguely see the scratches that have peeled off the paint. Gan Xinglei saw the broken door lock and whispered, "It was knocked open. I don't know if it's those two just now." The power of a corpse is much greater than that of an average person, as its twisted body and frenzy allow it to unleash more power. In this case, the anti-theft door cannot withstand impact. The living room was in a mess, with blood pollution turning the entire sofa red. There was a corpse lying on it, with a small portion missing. Find useful things and food. After 3 people entered the house and confirmed that there were no corpses in the living room, they began to search for supplies separately. With the apostles leading the way, even if you enter the bedroom, you don't worry about monsters hiding inside and being ambushed. Suhan searched for supplies in the kitchen and living room, Gan Xinglei went to the second and guest bedrooms, and Yan Meiyu went to the master bedroom. The kitchen things are relatively neat, and the refrigerator and cabinets are still intact. But when Suhan opened the refrigerator, a rotten smell suddenly came from him. All day and night without electricity, and in a completely sealed state, everything is already broken. The refrigerated ones, except for rice mixed sauce, are probably unusable. As for the things inside the freezer, the ice has already melted, and as soon as it was boiled, water flowed all over the ground. Everything was soaked in water, and not much of it was pork ribs. Although it only thawed and didn't break, Suhan didn't dare to take it. In this situation, even if you have diarrhea, you cannot see a doctor. It's not wrong to be cautious. Suhan. Suddenly, Xinglei's voice came, and Suhan became alert and hurried towards the second bedroom. What is the situation? Xinglei stood by the door, looking unhappy, and said in a low voice, "There is a survivor, but the situation is not very good." He pointed in the direction of the wardrobe, and the wardrobe door had already been opened. The floor cabinet was large enough to hide the next person. Suhan walked over with the corpse of the apostle and looked into the wardrobe. There was a young girl nestled among the clothes, with a pale face, tightly closed eyes, and a trembling body. Dida, the ticking sound came, and upon closer inspection, it was clothes piled up in dripping blood, originating from the girl's abdomen. "Take her out first and put her on the bed." Suhan asked the apostle to pick him up with a corpse and put him on the bed. At this moment, when he heard Xinglei's previous cry, Yan Meiyu also rushed over. After she approached to examine the woman's condition, she stood up and shook her head. Her face didn't look very good and she said, "There is a hole in her stomach that is a bite, and she is still running a fever. It may be that the wound is infected, and she has lost a lot of blood." The wound has been oozing blood, although it is now covered by Yan Meiyu's clothes, it is still slowly oozing blood, and it is difficult to stop the bleeding, not to mention that she is still suffering from a high fever and her skin is very hot. The three of them fell silent for a moment, and Suhan said, "Feed her some water and see if there is any anti-inflammatory medicine for her to use. If it's not good tomorrow, I'll take care of it." Everyone is not a doctor, and in this situation, it is not suitable to help find a doctor. Whether or not one can survive can only be left to fate. Yan Meiyu nodded and agreed, "Okay, I found some in the master bedroom." Simply dispose of the woman, close the door tightly, and then the three meet in the living room. "I found some snacks and home medication in the master bedroom, but not many. There are 2 power banks that have electricity and can charge flashlights." Yan Meiyu placed what she found on the table, and Xinglei continued, "There's nothing in the guest bedroom and the second bedroom, just a fruit knife. Suhan, do you want to dismantle the metal this time?" He remembered that Suhan needed metal, possibly a skill of his apostle corpse, which is why he asked this question. As long as Suhan becomes stronger, then they will be safer. Suhan pondered for a moment, but he had not yet determined the materials for the third fusion. Although the fusion could be interrupted and restarted, the wasted time and materials were not enough. Now that LV2's ordinary metal fusion has already consumed hundreds of pounds of metal, the consumption of LV3 will obviously be even greater. If all the rooms in a building are searched, it may not be possible to gather such a large amount unless the load-bearing walls are removed. However, people with normal brains would not do this. Not for now, he shook his head and said, "Continue searching for supplies and try to clean up the floors below. There is no refrigerator now, and there is basically no fresh food that can be preserved. Preserved meat, rice noodles, canned goods, snacks, and so on are all fine, but there may be even fewer. Sooner or later, you will have to go outside to find them. The earlier you clean up downstairs, the more convenient it is to plan." He didn't find anything to eat in the kitchen, only a small bag of rice and flour, so he naturally knew the current situation. "Okay, let's continue." The cooperation of the three gradually became tacit, and they continued to search for supplies on the 6th floor. In another open door, there was also a corpse. This time, Yan Meiyu's rotten skin mouse directly started, leaping up and using its advantage to tear and bite the neck of the corpse, grabbing a big bite of the meat, revealing deep bones. Suhan's apostolic corpse followed suit, and the metal claws directly penetrated the corpse's heart, killing it to death. Compared to corpses, perhaps the power of the rotting skin rat is not a strong point, but if it were a human, then that one could definitely kill. The wound is not only deep, but also the attack of the rotting skin rat carries rot poison. One household after another cleaned up, and it took less than a morning to clean up the 6th floor. Except for the woman in the first room, there were no survivors on the 6th floor. One room was empty, and 2 or 3 rooms had traces of massacres, leaving a mess. 3 pounds of cured meat, 30 pounds of rice noodles, 5 bags of dried noodles, 10 bags of instant noodles, and many snacks are all the materials found. There are also many drugs, all of which are commonly used and have little difference from the ones found before. There aren't many things, and even 3 backpacks are not fully loaded when packed separately. After weighing a few, the 3 continue to clean up towards the 5th floor. Compared to the 6th floor, the situation on the 5th floor is not much better, and there are also 3 wandering corpses gathering in front of the door at the end of the corridor. Roar! 3 twisted corpses saw Suhan and his group appear at the other end of the corridor and rushed forward. They came with great force, but after the cleaning of the 6th floor, Don Xinglei and Yan Meiyu also adapted better to the end of the world. I saw Gan Xinglei manipulating the corpse to come forward and directly hug one of the corpses, and then Yan Meiyu's rotten skin mouse jumped up, taking advantage of the empty space where the corpse was being controlled and gnawing its head to pieces. The 2 of them cooperated harmoniously and solved one of the corpses in just 2 or 3 attempts. And the remaining 2 headed straight forward, blocked by Suhan's apostles, flipped over one end with a heavy punch, and then grabbed their heads with sharp claws. The other end roared and grabbed the apostle, causing a piercing friction sound. Iron skin intercepted the attack, and in the next moment, it was directly pierced through the heart by claws. The corpse was cleaned up and blood stained the hallway, but the 3 of them had gradually become accustomed to it. From this room, before Suhan could finish speaking, the door suddenly opened and a man with glasses and a thin face leaned out slightly, saying, "Are you the rescuers?" End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Zhu Xiong. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Zhu Xiong. There were not only men in the room, but Suhan looked inside and realized that there was a woman behind him with long wavy hair and thin lips. "Do you want to protect us from going downstairs?" "Wait, I'll tidy up my things." The woman saw that the 3 of them were silent for a moment, and then vaguely heard Suhan's half-sentence, "From this room," thinking it was for search and rescue, so she spoke on her own. "I waited for a day to come, but finally I came to save someone." "We are not rescue workers," Suhan interrupted the woman's incessant chatter, which left the 2 of them stunned and asked in reverse, "Who are you then?" "Neighbors upstairs. It's been a day and you still can't grasp the situation." Suhan's words were cold and indifferent, and the impression they gave him was not very good. There was always a sense of commanding in their words. In fact, it was precisely at this moment that the man with glasses and the woman looked closely and found that although they were all dressed in dark assault suits, they were not uniforms, but looked similar. The 2 of them had a slight change in gaze, with a hint of awe fading away. The man said, "So it's a neighbor. These monsters were all brought by you yourself, not by the country. So, what kind of blood spirit book is real?" He pondered his mind and said, "This student doll can even get monsters. If you ask for a way, then I can either not. It will be safe then. If you kill the monster yourself, you can make a contract." Suhan did not conceal this matter, which cannot be considered a secret. However, when the man heard this, he looked pale and asked him to kill the monster. "Isn't that asking him to die?" His eyes twitched as he looked at Suhan and suddenly thought to himself, college students are easy to deceive. It's better to let him work. "Little brother, isn't it difficult for me to kill monsters? I'll give you 5,000 yuan and a gold ring. How about you help the two of us catch 2 monsters? Suhan's eyes flashed with a sneer, saying that men are smart. They know that cash may not be as useful as gold, but when they say they are stupid, they really can't understand the situation. They really think anyone can guide them. Old Gon, follow the rules and collect the cleaning fee. Gon Xinglei grinned and said, received. He walked up to the man and said, we have cleaned up the corpses on the 5th floor to ensure your safety, so according to the rules, we will charge a cleaning fee. Half of the food and medicine will be paid, and useful items will be used to offset those without them. What? The man's voice suddenly increased by 8 degrees, his eyes widened, and his fingers Gon Xinglei said, this is robbery. If you don't help, you won't help. How can you do this? What a group. He didn't dare to finish cursing, but his wife screamed, you killed the monster yourself, not us. What's our business? The two of them spoke, feeling that the situation was not good, and immediately pushed to close the door and hide inside the house. Bang! However, at this moment, Suhan's apostolic corpse hit the door panel with a heavy punch, causing the metal anti-theft door to sink into a large pit. The man and his wife screamed in pain and were knocked to the ground by the tremendous force coming from the door panel. Go in and take it yourself. Suhan spoke, and Gon Xinglei nodded, controlling his own corpse and going in with Yan Meiyu to retrieve supplies. This time, seeing the power of the apostles, the two of them remained silent and dared not speak, but there was a hint of resentment in their eyes. Although he is domineering, Suhan's fees are still reasonable. All the corpses have been cleaned up, and a safe environment is where half of the supplies are exchanged, which is lighter or heavier, as can be seen by discerning people. As for whether he will offend others, Suhan is really not afraid. He won't kill people casually, but if someone wants to seek death, he really doesn't mind practicing his courage and mastering a skill that can turn bones into ashes. Suddenly, there was a slight sound of opening the door, and Suhan's expression froze. He became alert and the apostle's corpse looked at the door of the room .7504, where the sound came from. Suhan walked over with the corpse of the apostle, approaching the door of room 7504, and indeed saw a gap. Brother, don't do anything, I'm also a living person. A middle-aged man with an inch head leaned out with a smile on his face, wearing a black short-sleeved shirt. He was 1.8 meters tall and had a Chinese-style face. His middle-aged growth brought his face closer to a circular shape, and a scar on his forearm was clearly visible. What's going on? Brother, my name is Zhu Xiong. I have heard and seen everything you said just now. Brother, I have great skills. Zhu Xiong did not show any timidity when he saw Suhan and the apostles, but instead praised them. Before Suhan could speak, Zhu Xiong continued, those who are still alive have received your help. Half of the food and medicine are collected. Although I feel uncomfortable in my heart, it should be. That little glasses and his mistress are not interesting. I still have 20 pounds of rice and noodles, and 6 bottles of mutated, which can be half of you. But I also have some things to discuss with my brothers, I don't know if it's convenient. Zhu Xiong's words were straightforward, implying that something had been taken. He must have been unhappy in his heart, but there was nothing to say about this thing being handed over. This red bear has something. Zhu Xiong's words made Suhan feel comfortable in his heart, whether it was insincere or truly open-minded. Such words were bound to be more comforting than bossing around. However, he remained calm and didn't feel complacent. He asked, what do you want to ask? Upon hearing Suhan's answer, Zhu Xiong's face lit up with joy. His cheeks trembled with a smile and he said, it's presumptuous to ask. Brother, don't blame me. Besides killing them, is there anything else that the contracted monster should pay attention to? To be honest, if it weren't for the fact that there were 3 monsters in the hallway, I would have been using a crowbar to open it for a long time. Suhan. What is brother doing? When I was young, I used to run transportation. Zhu Xiong reached out and pointed to the scar on his hand. Later, I couldn't move it anymore and bought 2 trucks to work as a small boss with a logistics company. I can run long distances, and I am still a former long-distance bus driver. I really can't do it without a third of courage. Suhan showed a hint of confusion. I see. He also concealed the details of the contract and said, just kill it with your own hands. After receiving the answer, Zhu Xiong had a sense of confidence and said, brother, I'll make a deal with you. I have 2 truck keys, 2 pry bars, and a few large wrenches in the house, which are better weapons than your kitchen knife. I'll trade one of them with weapons for you, please help me. Kill corpses. Yes, it's about killing those monsters. I dare to go on point 1, but I can't guarantee any unexpected situations. When I reach middle age, I soak in goji berries every day, and my body is not as young as before. So I beg my brothers to protect me for a while and wait for me to kill the monsters. Zhu Xiong clenched his fists and said, I'm not authentic in this matter. Normally, I should have given half of these things to my brothers, and I would have borrowed flowers and offered them to Buddha for trading. However, I also have some use as a truck driver. Several logistics companies in the city, bulk commodity markets, and warehouses all know about this. If I need to search for supplies, I will definitely help without hesitation. Okay, I'll help you find one later. Suhan didn't think about it for long. Whether the transaction was authentic or not, let's not mention it for now. Just because he knew about the situation of bulk commodity warehouses and markets was enough to demonstrate his value. Do a favor and leave a friendship, that's completely no problem. Most importantly, this person is an old martial artist and not someone who easily drags their feet. Suhan, the things have been moved. Gan Xinglei and Yan Meiyu came out, still holding everything in their hands. With a bang, the man with glasses and the mistress over there eagerly closed the door. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Transactions. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10 Transactions. Is that all you have? Suhan was a bit surprised and looked at the things in their hands, not even rice, only a few bags of bread and noodles. Gan Xinglei roast. There is not much to eat, but a lot of umbrellas and blue pills. Yan Meiyu flushed and kicked Gan Xinglei, who was complaining about it. Zhu Xiong laughed heartily and said, it's not surprising. That little white-faced mistress raised here doesn't have these things to be surprised. The 2 of them have very high eyes, and look down on people with their noses in the sky. They can't even understand the world clearly and are asking for trouble. Gan Xinglei saw Zhu Xiong and his eyes were full of curiosity. Who is he? Zhu Xiong. Suhan introduced the 2 sides and also talked about what happened just now. Zhu Xiong said, wait a few, I'll get you something. He entered the room without closing the door, not afraid of Suhan and the others coming in. In an empty room, he came out holding 2 pry bars, several large wrenches, metal pipes, and even a big hammer. Undoubtedly, it's transportation. These things may seem fierce, but if you put them in the car, they are legal tools that can no longer be legal. But no one knows if it needs to be used in a legal place. These things can repair cars and people. Crowbar, Stanley brand, about 1.2 meters long, weighing around 16 pounds, not light in weight. Even a strong man may not be able to carry this thing for long, but with the weight, length, and hard ground, Zhu Xiong's suggestion of opening a ladle for the corpse was not just a joke. Suhan pondered for a moment, but felt a little lighter. Now that he could easily lift 300 pounds, holding such a weapon naturally felt a bit lighter. However, compared to the bone-chopping knife, this thing is indeed much more convenient and deserves the name of the physics holy sword. The length of the water pipe is similar to that of a crowbar, about 1.2 meters. Compared to the crowbar, it is much lighter, at most only 5 or 6 pounds, but the thickness is not bad, and it is also a striking tool. The wrench is a bit short, less than 50 centimeters, but its weight is not much less than that of a water pipe, and the heavy wrench head is obviously more likely to hit people. These are all my tools for repairing and putting cars on. I didn't expect to be able to use them now. Are you using them well, brother? Not bad, Suhan nodded and put away the bone-chopping knife. He held a pry bar in one hand and stuffed a wrench into his backpack, with the long handle exposed on the side zipper. Old Gon, you can also change your weapons. Okay. Gon Xinglei went directly to get the crowbar, but upon weighing it, he found it to be a bit heavy. Although he could still hold it after strengthening it, it was still a bit difficult, so he replaced it with a metal water pipe. Yan Meiyu took a metal water pipe directly, leaving behind a pry bar, several water pipes, and a wrench. Apostles can be given weapons. Yan Meiyu had a sudden idea and realized the disadvantage of the previous struggle. Although Gon Xinglei also contracted the corpse as an apostle, it seems that he is currently only slightly stronger in terms of strength, and has not formed any desire for overwhelming combat power. One-on-one is easy to say, but one-on-two can be a bit cramped, making it difficult to fully protect the host. However, if you take the weapon, it will be different again. Yes, give the apostles 2 wrenches. Gon Xinglei took 2 wrenches and then manipulated the apostles to grab them. Unexpectedly, the huge claws could tightly grip them, like a killer holding a wrench, looking a bit creepy. Do you want that one, Suhan? Gon Xinglei held the water pipe and asked Suhan. Suhan shook his head and looked at Zhu Xiong. Brother Zhu, prepare to find a monster for you. Zhu Xiong's eyes flickered with joy as he responded, thank you, brother. It's not difficult to find a monster. There are 4 households on the 5th floor, and 2 households have their doors broken open. There is nothing left, and one of them is even empty. It should be because the tenant has moved out and no new tenants have entered. The remaining 2 households had not yet opened their doors when they heard a faint roar, clearly indicating something. Brother, I'll break through the door and let that thing come into the hallway later. Get ready. Zhu Xiong nodded, his expression solemn, and his thick palm tightly grasped the steel pipe in his hand. Click. Suhan's apostolic corpse was as sharp as before, with sharp metal claws inserted directly into the iron door, making a hole, and then unlocking it. With a gentle click, the door opened and the corpses inside heard the movement and quickly rushed towards it. The apostle's corpse retreated 2 or 3 meters and arrived at a position behind Zhu Xiong, only 1 position apart. This distance, even if Zhu Xiong misses, can still save him. Zhu Xiong took a deep breath, his eyes wide open as he looked at the door. With a loud bang, the door was knocked open, and a corpse stumbled out of it. The spine twisted, but the body was not short, about 1.8 meters high, equivalent to Zhu Xiong. He roared and opened his big mouth before charging towards the nearest Zhu Xiong. Zhu Xiong's heart was pounding, but his eyes became more and more fierce. I'm sorry for your neighbor, I'm sorry, he said. He strode forward without any hesitation, and the entire metal water pipe was hit hard. With a muffled bang, the corpse stumbled and fell short, charging fiercely. Zhu Xiong is an old martial artist who knows not to hesitate when fighting. He then swung the metal tube in his hand and smashed it onto the ground with a loud bang, hitting the flesh with his stick. His arm was smashed and his head was also sunk, blood splattered and landed on him, but he didn't stop at all. After more than 10 sticks in a row, Zhu Xiong finally stopped breathing heavily. I'm exhausted, mad. The flesh corpse was beaten to death, and Zhu Xiongcai did not hesitate. The blood spirit book on his arm emitted a red light, then enveloped the flesh corpse he had beaten to death. The corpse turned into a red light and then combined with the pages of his blood spirit book, ultimately completing the contract. At the moment of the contract, Zhu Xiong felt the power of the apostles in return, and a warm current surged throughout his body. This feels more comfortable than washing feet. Zhu Xiong's body trembled slightly, and a thought came to him subconsciously. The warmth flowed away before he regained his senses. Thank you for your kindness. If there is anything you need to help in the end of the world, just let me know. If you want to go out and search for supplies, the truck won't be able to drive, but you can also pick me up. Zhu Xiong did not breed ambition due to the contract. The world is definitely going to be chaotic now, and monsters are not just these corpses. Only by working together can we survive, which is the same as when we were in chaos and took a big car to the northwest. It will be getting dark soon, and we will continue to clean up tomorrow. Upon hearing Suhan's words, Zhu Xiong understood and immediately nodded. Tomorrow I will also contribute and hang out with you, brother. After cleaning the 6th and 5th floors, the light in the hallway gradually dimmed, and it was estimated to be almost evening. Suhan and his companions retreated all the way to the 7th floor and moved out all the supplies. On the 5th and 6th floors, we found about 150 kilograms of rice, 30 bags of noodles including instant noodles, 10 canned goods, 4 kilograms of cured meat, some other eggs, snacks, medicine, and most of the medicines for colds and fever. Yanmeiyu took the initiative to count the harvest of materials, and the total amount of materials collected by Suhan on the 7th floor would not exceed 300 kilograms. A normal person has plenty of food, fruits, and other things in a day, and rice is only about half a pound to a little over a pound. However, now that everyone has been fortified and the meat quality is not sufficient, they will definitely eat more rice and noodles. 200 to 300 kilograms of rice and noodles are enough for them to eat for 1 or 2 months, but cooking rice requires water, and the water source is actually the maximum limit. Tomorrow we will focus on cleaning up the meat corpses and go downstairs as soon as possible to see what's going on. We are still collecting supplies, but not all of them are important. Also, we will try to pack as much water as possible, and it may run out of water soon. Yanmeiyu nodded and said, "Got it, I'll go cook it first." Suhan advised, "Boil more." Dinner is very simple, with preserved meat and some vegetables that haven't been damaged, followed by 3 or 4 pounds of rice. The 3 of them finished a simple meal, which looked like a lot of food, but there was nothing left. Suhan's physical strengthening is far more powerful than Xinglei and Yanmeiyu, so he naturally eats more and his meals are almost covered by him. After dinner, the 3 of them sat on the sofa. After a moment of thought, Suhan looked at them and asked, "What is the rate at which your apostolic power is being fed back?" End of this chapter.